Yes, the COVID Senate Oversight Committee will be calling today the Health Department, the Digital Transformation Agency and the Attorney General's Department, and no doubt we will be discussing the app in more detail, so people will be able to see that from about 1 o'clock Canberra time.
And if I could ask, there's a big story today coming out that does impact South Australia in particular, with Naval Group handing out bonuses to its employees. This is as the subs contract is revealed to be over time, over budget, getting up to $80 billion. Is that appropriate that they be handing out bonuses to their employees when that's taxpayer money?
Yes, so people need to understand that Naval Group Australia's sole contract is the Future Submarine Program. So it is, in actual fact, funded by Defence, by the taxpayer. And look, it doesn't pass the pub test. It's insensitive to be giving workers a pay rise. I don't blame the workers. It's insensitivity by the management in handing out effectively taxpayer paid bonuses. In circumstances where we've got businesses closing, we've got people lining up to collect unemployment en masse. We've even got company directors trimming their own salaries, and then we see this occurring, and particularly in the circumstances, as you mentioned, where the Auditor General found that Naval Group had not delivered a range of documents and indeed were late for a critical milestone.
And this is really key because the discussion around these submarines is a big part of Australia's capability in the region, but we're looking at an incredibly long time frame here, decades before we'd have any of these submarines online. Right now, there is the option for Australia to drop the contract, and it would only cost around $140 million, I understand. Do you think there is a risk that the government could drop this contract and look at funding local suppliers instead?
Well, we have a real problem brewing in that this submarine project has gone up from $50 billion to $80 billion, and then this week we found out it's gone up again on currency exchanges to $90 billion. And we know that the budget is going to shrink in terms of GDP. Defence have been promised 2% of GDP, but they're going to get 2% of something that was smaller than it was before. This is going to cause all sorts of problems. Other capabilities will have to be dropped in order to fund this project, and so serious questions need to be asked and answered.
And this is something that is supposed to be creating jobs in South Australia that's still a long way off, with the French building the first parts, at least in France, and saying that they're having trouble finding local suppliers. Is that a concern as well? And do you think that it could be a good course of action to break that contract?
Well, we've got a situation where we know that the local content is much lower than was anticipated. Originally, Christopher Pyne had said 90%, dropped back to 60%. We know it's well under 50%. Right now we're seeing there's a competition in play at the moment between a Greek battery company and a South Australian battery company, and I fear that contract may end up going offshore for other reasons. We really do need to look very closely at this contract. We could certainly be getting more submarines with, in my view, much greater capability, much sooner, built from an Adelaide shipyard.
And you've also been fighting the government for a few FOIs around their COVID response. You haven't had any luck.
Oh, look, this is really strange. I asked for briefings that the Prime Minister received on COVID-19 throughout January, and that's a period you might recall where DFAT had started to warn health of an outbreak of a virus in Wuhan, through to around about the 20th of January, where the Chief Medical Officer said that the game changed because there was confirmation of human-to-human transfer of the virus. Asking for briefings. Under FOI, I was advised there were 5 briefings made to the Prime Minister, and they've thrown every FOI exemption under the sun at me to prevent me and the public seeing what they were being briefed on at the time. Now, this is at the same time what they're asking for an inquiry into an international inquiry into how this virus started, which I support. but it's duplicitous and an air of hypocrisy to ask, for example, the Chinese government to open up and show exactly what was happening back in December and January, when our Prime Minister himself has refused to let the Australian public see exactly what was going on inside government at that same time.